Hello, Internet. Hi, thanks for joining us again. Just waiting for a few more people to arrive. Who we got in the chat room? Yeah, Omri, welcome back. Mark, hello, mate. Thanks for coming back. Thanks for promoting this as well. It's really cool of you. Scott, good to hear from you. Quantum, hello. Obviously, we've got Percussa, so we've got Bert and Celine in the chat room as well. So they're on hand again if you want to ask any questions as we go along, please do. This is part 3. We're going to look at MIDI implementation. Just while we're waiting for a few more people, I'm just going to have a quick play with this patch that I've got going on here, which is basically what was from last week. So I'm just going to have a little play around with some reverbs and filters and stuff like that just for a couple of moments, and I'll be right back. That I was just quickly playing around with stuff there was basically because I was showing you that playing around with this requires a bit of jumping around from screen to screen to get to parameter. So what I wanted to illustrate today is I'm going to start using this MIDI controller, the Behringer BCF 2000 in this case. You can use essentially any MIDI controller for this. And I'm going to map things from this MIDI controller straight into the SSP, which is going to allow me to basically negate any need to jump around different parameters inside the SSP. I can just control stuff from here. And this is something that came from, I think it was Omri asked even in episode 1. And if you haven't seen episode 1 and episode 2, go check those out. There's links to those on here. People wanted to know, how can I use this in a live performance scenario? And I think that's a really good question because currently what you've just seen me doing there in this sort of live capacity here, like I say, requires a bit of jumping around. So we'll jump in and we'll implement some MIDI here, and if there's particular things you want me to show you as we go along, do say, you know, if you want me to map something to a filter or whatever. So that's absolutely fine. I'll just jump back over to here, and I'm just going to reboot this particular preset for today's show, which just takes me back to default. So we've got our drums from last week, which is coming out of the left and right, 1 and 2. And we've got this bass line. This bass line last week I had actually running from the key step, whereas this week what I did just before we started the show was I took out the key step and actually I implemented a step sequencer inside the SSP. And this step sequencer, remember from the first episode, by the way, we're using a step sequencer for the drums, which is the blue gates are doing kick drums, the yellow gates are doing hi-hats. I got another step sequencer and I put this in, which is actually doing the notes that you're hearing, and it's triggering the envelope, which are from these blue gates here. So you can use a step sequencer really easy like this just to come up with some simple melodies really quickly. Just to make sure stuff is in tune, I'm actually sending the step sequencer, and you can see this again with the arrows that clearly show out the direction that signals travel. It's going into this thing called the MTQ, which is the microtonal quantizer. And this quantizer just works like a normal quantizer in that it takes the incoming notes and will quantize it to a particular scale that you're using. Now, there's a ton of scales already in the SSP, and when I say a ton, there is a ton. There is absolutely loads. I've chosen one at the minute which is diatonic soft diatonic soft chromatical, I guess. But if we navigate into these folders here, we've got all of these different Ionic, Indian Rot, Indian Rat, Indian ABCD. I don't even know what half of these are, but you could just load these up and you've got different quantizations going on, basically. Fifths, fourths, diminished, diatonic. Maybe the ones that you're more familiar with are in there as well. But I just chose one at random. And you can see how it's quantizing the notes to the particular scale on the screen there. Really quick and easy to use. So that sequencer is going into the quantizer. The quantizer then sends the notes out to the oscillators that I had from last week. And if I just quickly show you how the pitching that works on this. Let's go into the step sequencer. So this is driving the synth at the minute. Obviously the tempo, the pattern length, the clock division still, and this sequencer, by the way, is synced to my drum sequencer using the internal clock inside of the SSP, and you can actually restart them all. There's a hard restart button which allows you to restart those sequencers if they, for whatever reason, go out of time or you stop one or whatever. So there's my notes. These are the triggers for the envelopes. So if I was to scroll over to here, turn off particular triggers, or gates rather, add them, change the actual note. Obviously, depending on what scale you've got loaded into the quantizer, depends what it's going to snap to. So it works exactly like any other kind of step sequencer would. You've got your gates, you've got your notes coming from there. Nice and easy. So I just wanted to quickly show you that, just to show you that you can actually do step sequencing with notes and gates melodic values as well as the percussive stuff, the drums that we've got going. And yeah, if I turn up the drums, you'll hear that they're in time. All good. Great. Okay. So let's get on to the MIDI mapping, because I think that's what we're really here today to have a look at. As I say, I want to show you how you can implement MIDI into this and make it fun and interactive and usable in a live performance. I'm using the Behringer BCF 2000. I love this thing. It's really old now. I don't even know. I don't think they make them anymore, but you can pick these up pretty cheap. I love this because it's got motorized faders and you can skip through different banks and you can load up presets really, really quickly with it. You get rotary controllers, you get buttons as well as the faders. Really, really cool. And more importantly, it's very easy to program. And one of the things that you're going to want to do when you're setting up your MIDI controllers to work with anything, whether it's the SSP or a DAW or whatever, you're going to want to make sure that you've got the option to essentially control and map your MIDI controller, your hardware, and the Behringer is just really easy to do. I just really like it. So one thing that I should say is that the MIDI module that we're using, and I'll load that up now inside of here. I've just turned down the volume for now so you don't get bored of this. Yeah, the MIDI module, if I just boot that up for you, is over here. MIDI, there we go. I'm just going to insert that into here. The MIDI module has been updated quite a bit since the first iteration of it coming out, and I just thought I'd mention this. The MIDI module is basically the way that any MIDI input going into the USB port on the front of the SSP talks to whatever's going on inside of the MIDI inside of the SSP. Now you can control on each MIDI module that you insert, you can control, I'm just checking this is right, 8 MIDI CCs per MIDI module. So we'll look at that. We might even get all 8 going. You can also toggle on and off which MIDI channels the SSP is listening to on that particular module. So channels 1 to 16, you can turn them on and off. You can have all 16 on, or you can have just one on or none, but that won't make any sense. You've got pitch bend, pressure, or CC data that comes into it as well, will be associated with whatever note is being played as well. So I should explain that a little bit more. If you're playing things like polyphony, or you've got multiple MIDI modules in there, the SSP has to think, oh, what am I listening to for each MIDI module? Am I listening to pitch for this one? Am I listening to pitch bend on that one? Am I listening to pressure, and so on and so forth? So any of that sort of information that comes in will be associated with the module from the note that's being played. I should also mention that this supports MPE straight out the box. So those of you out there using MPE, it works. It's there. It just works. That's really cool. I don't have anything MPE in this studio. I'm just old school MIDI. What else should I mention? For non-MPE controllers, pitch bend and control data will go to the MIDI module that's currently playing a note. I mentioned that before. And also for more flexibility, the pitch bend data has been kind of given its own essential entry point, if you like, which allows you to tap into the pitch bend data sort of on its own and use it in interesting ways. So you could use that pitch bend data again to open and close a filter rather than just it doing pitch bend, for example. So you can tap into the pitch bend data completely separately. Yeah, and that also applies to multiple voices. So essentially what I'm saying here is that since that MIDI module came out, has been quite an update on it. So that's, you know, down to Celine and Bert there, just listening to what people are wanting within the module, and I've updated that. So that's really cool. So let's jump in. Let's start assigning some stuff. Let's do what we're here to do. I think what I'd like to do initially, because I've got this MIDI, this sequence running here, which is an oscillator running into a filter. I think the cool thing to do straight away would be open and close this filter using one of the faders on here. So over on the SSP, what we're going to do is connect the MIDI module to the filter. So we always need to connect together the modules which allow us to do the internal sort of patching and cabling. So holding down the shift button, and I want to connect it to the SVF, which is 2 along, 1, 2, that one. Now we can actually plug cables between the two of them, and in this case I want to send CC message A to the SVF cutoff. Sorry, wrong button. That side. There we go. And you can see the little line has appeared. So they're now connected. So basically it's saying it's going to listen to any CC message that's coming in, that's associated to A, and will open and close the cutoff on the filter. So let's go into the MIDI module itself by pressing the P button to get into the parameters. Now in here we've got the ability, as I mentioned before, to decide what CCA, B, C, D, and if we push down we can go to E, F, G and H. We can give these numbers, and we can turn on and off which MIDI channels this is listening to. So I'm just going to turn off all the MIDI channels at the minute, so it won't be hearing anything. And what we need to do is match up the CC message coming in from my MIDI controller to CCA. So if I jump over to my Behringer, let's have a look at my first fader here. On this Behringer, it's really easy to see what this is kicking out, what this fader is kicking out, and I can modify that. But if we hit edit and I just move the fader, it can tell me what channel it's on. So currently it's transmitting on channel 3. It tells me that it's kicking out CC message 12. So channel 3 and CC message 12 is what we want. So jumping over here, we want channel 3 on. So it's listening to channel 3. And I said 12, didn't I? So CCA is 12. So that means, hopefully, that now the SSP is hearing CC12 coming in, which is associated to A, and that A is connected to the filter cutoff. Let's have a listen. As I open and if I move this fader now, we can hear the filter slightly opening and closing. In fact, if we look on the front of the SSP, you can see as I turn up the fader, the value goes up, turn it down, value goes down. So it actually gives you visual feedback of what it's receiving. And you can actually, then go in and you can scale this as well. So if you don't want it to open and close that much, obviously if you go into the filter and set the start point, so if I close it right up, you can hear it making more of a difference there. So close it right down. So and that's it. And it's very responsive. That's how easy it is. That simple. CC message into there, assign that CC message to what you want it to affect inside of the SSP, and that's it basically. Let me just see if we've got any questions on that at the minute. No, that all seems to be quite explanatory. So I'm just going to go ahead now and I'm just going to assign some more things to the rest of the faders on here. So what else can we do? Well, we could affect the reverb that this synth line's going through. So let's connect the MIDI module to the reverb. So they're now ready to be wired together. And I'm going to use CCB to change the mix of the reverb. You must remember to go over to the reverb and turn on so it's listening to things coming into the mix, and you see the little one is now activated, which means that it's seeing something there. In this case it'll be CCB. So let's assign this fader to the wet of the reverb. So let's have a look, what's this kicking out again? So this is channel 3, that's good. Channel 3 and CC11. So if I change, don't need to change the channel because it's here in channel 3, and as good practice anyway, you probably want to make sure that all your MIDI messages are going down the same MIDI channel basically. And I need to change this to 11 because that's what the fader's kicking out. We should now, so that's completely dry, and that's with the reverb. We jump back in to the reverb and we maybe make the maximum a bit more like that. Dry. Can even add some more. It's a lot of reverb, it's very big. Dry. Open up the filter. Bring some reverb in. Now what's brilliant about that basically means that I now no longer need to jump between two different pages to change these two different values. I've got them set up on these faders. Reverb, filter. Easy peasy. Just check the chat room, see if any questions on there. Omri's asking, so can you set the max limit in the module itself and the MIDI controller would go up to that point? Yes, you can. You can use, as I mentioned, just like on any connection that you make, you can actually scale that by holding down shift and turning the dial, and you can actually scale what that minimum and maximum value will be, or in this case the maximum value. So that's one way of doing it. Obviously the other way that you can do it is you can do it on the MIDI controller itself. So actually on this MIDI controller you can change, if I go edit, and you can change the maximum and minimum value to be whatever you want it to be. So you can do it on the MIDI controller. Sorry, I didn't have the right camera on there. Yeah, if you wanted to change it on the SSP, hold down shift and you can change and scale the amount that fader will kick out CC. So if we've got it up to 99, or 1 rather, it's full. And then if we turn it down a little bit, it's only going to go a little bit. So you've got that flexibility, you've got that optionality in there as well, which is cool. Okay, what else can we affect? I think what we'll also do is play around with I like to play around with envelope times when I'm playing live, particularly things like release. really tight all the way. To do that. So let's assign this fader to change the release time on that envelope. So jumping over to here, we need to connect the MIDI to the envelope. So same way, that's those two ready to go. And we're going to use CCC to change the release time of the envelope. Boom. So they're now connected. Must go over to the envelope and make sure that, oh yeah, it's already activated, release is already modifiable. So what we need to do is go to our MIDI module in the same way, and we need to assign MIDI CCC to the correct CC coming out of this fader. So this fader is kicking out channel 3, CC10. So we need to do that. Channel 3, CC10. There we go. You can actually hear it's already made an effect. So short to long release. Now they're the kind of things that I tend to play around with when I'm playing live. I tend to play around with filters, pitch, octaves, gates, and envelopes, basically. They're the main things that I'm playing around with. The notes tend to stay the same from whatever they're being sequenced from. So I'm just trying to think what else we might use. So we've got some drums going on here. So we could look at maybe modifying, using that same MIDI module, and I could modify, well, there's so much you could modify. I mean, I could modify the oscillator in here. I could change, you know, the y-axis, the z-axis. I could change LFO speeds. I could change, in the envelope, I could change the attack, decay, sustain portions within there. All of these basically are MIDI mappable. And with the drums, I don't know if you remember, but the hi-hat I've got going through this reverb, which kind of makes it sort of white noisy. That reverb is then going through a filter. That filter is being sequenced by those values there. So I thought it might be fun, maybe I can assign a fader to the reverb, so it takes it to a normal hi-hat, to that kind of messed up sound. So let's do that. So let's go back over to our patching window, the networking, and there's the MIDI module. Now we're going to connect it all the way over here to the reverb. So we're going to select this shift button, which highlights that area, and it's 1, 2, we select that, and now they're ready to be connected. So we'll send CCD to the reverb or the filter, whatever we want to really, but in this case we'll do the mix of the reverb, and then over here on this reverb, do that, and it should now be working over there. So let's go over to our MIDI module, and we need to map it to our next fader. Which is fader number 4. Now fader number 4 is kicking out channel 3, number 9. Just check the minimum maximum. Yeah, that's all good. So CC9 we're looking for. So on CCD number 9. And we can see now that those two are working. That is channel 3. Let me just double check. Channel 3. Oh, sorry, 8. Parameter 8, my bad. Very small amount of CC message basically, and we can see now that it's kicking out the full range in there. That was on the Behringer. Like I mentioned, you can change the max and the minimum value on the Behringer to kick out CC values. So with that done now, that should be kicking out over to here, and we can see that coming in. Change this value, and we've got a slight difference there going on in the hi-hats. So far, just check the chat room. Or is there anything anyone wants me to specifically change at all? Let's have a look. Things that I'd quite like to see eventually moving forward is the ability to do things like let's jump over to the right camera. Yeah, we're in the right camera. So things like in the sequencer, it'd be cool maybe to be able to turn on and off gates and that kind of thing. Obviously you can do that here, which is kind of cool. It's really good that you can jump to them. But I'm just wondering, because with this particular Behringer I've got these push buttons along the top here, and that might be quite nice to turn on and off gates and sequence stuff this way. That could be quite interesting. But all of these things, you know, you can put forward to the team over at Percussa on their website, on the forum, and they'll look to implement these things if they think that that's something that they want in there as well. So that's something that I'd like to see in there. Other than that, it just works. You know, there's no reason now why I can't go out and play live with this, with my MIDI controller, and like I say, you can use any MIDI controller and perform without any issue. I should also say that in a new update coming as well, Bert's assured me that if you want to use multiple MIDI controllers, so if you've got this one and a key step, you can actually have them both connected, and there'll be an option within the MIDI module which will enable you to choose which MIDI controller is going to kick out what CC to which part that you want to send it to. So that's really cool. Multiple MIDI controllers I think is going to be really great. That way I might be able to use the key step for kind of sequencing drums and gates, and I might use the BCF for changing filters and reverbs and all that kind of thing really. So that's something to keep an eye on. Just see if there's any other questions in there. No other questions at all. Great. So you'll all get tested on this next week, so I hope you've been making notes. I think that's kind of it. I didn't want to go too long on this video. The other ones have been quite long and quite in depth about the routing and stuff like that. So I want to keep this one semi-short for today. Next week, what I thought I'd do is start looking at implementing external CV. So I might use something like MATTHS and start taking some of the CV out of there, and we'll start using some of the inputs, of which there are 16 on the SSP, to start modulating some of the internal stuff in there as well. So I'll have MIDI going on, I'll have external CV going on, and I'll show you how all that functions, because there's a whole module dedicated to it. And yeah, I think it's just something that's worth going through so you understand how that works as well. So yeah, if you've just got into watching these videos, go back and watch part 1, which will show you how to do using the sampler and playback and sequencing of things like drums and effects. Part 2 was about making mono bass synth sounds essentially, and then here we've got MIDI. So go back and check those out if you want to know more information on how those work. Just you'll find them on the playlist on here. So with that, I think we'll leave it at that. I'll just have a very quick jam, and I'll do a fade out, I guess. So it's also too hot to be in the studio today, and everyone should be out on the beach or something. So thanks for joining me again. Really appreciate it. I'll keep an eye out for any other questions as well. Oh yeah, Percussa have just mentioned that all of the inputs and the outputs on the SSP are DC coupled as well, 32-bit resolution at 192 kilohertz. So yeah, I don't think you'll have any problem interfacing it with anything really.